Well, welcome everybody to the Accelerator program. My name is Gordon Glenister, and I'm one of the mentors on this course. For those of you that don't know who I am, I'm the founder of the Branded Content Marketing Association, Global Head of Influencer Marketing. I'm also an author on influencer marketing strategy, which you can see there. And I'm also the host of the Influence Global podcast. So if you fancy listening to a good podcast on influencer marketing, then certainly there's one to listen to. So we're just going to run through what we're going to be talking about today. Four sections really. How to build your personal brand in social media and grow your influence. Then best practice guidelines on influencer marketing for influencers and creators. What brands look for in finding content creators and influencers, and examples of how you can make money as a content creator. Okay, so I thought I'd just start a little bit by really understanding and helping you get some definition around what an influencer really is and what influencer marketing is. My definition is simply an influencer is an individual who can affect change in behavior of others, often through trusted opinion, knowledge, and content creation. In fact, it's nothing new, really. If you look at word of mouth marketing, it's been around for donkeys. So it's just, this is a new term, if you will, but it's all about using individuals rather than traditional advertising methods. And then if we look at what influencer marketing is, influencer marketing, therefore, happens when somebody, an influencer, is involved in a campaign to promote a product or service. I thought you'd find it quite interesting just to see how what countries are showing the biggest amount of growth in terms of individuals buying from content creators online. And Brazil, which is a country that I have a lot of involvement with, is right at the top of the list. They absolutely go wild for YouTubers, and there's many examples of them that have, people just love these guys, love what they do. Their content is consistent. Now, maybe they haven't got so much competition, perhaps, as the United States and some of the European countries, but nevertheless, it's interesting to see how that has grown hugely. So why do people follow influencers? Well, there's a number of reasons. First of all, they want to learn something new and different. They want to pass the time. If we look at the way we view our phones, we're scrolling. So all that means is that the content now really has to stand out more than ever. In fact, we're in the attention economy, aren't we? They want to gain inspiration and find interesting quotes and ideas that are going to help them in their lives in some way. They want to learn about new brands, and a lot of successful influencers are about reviewing products to bring the products and services to life in a way that perhaps a traditional advert may not do. They want to be entertained. If you look at the growth of TikTok, for example, many examples of fabulous content that really does get us addicted to it. And news as well, particularly amongst a lot of young people. In fact, even during the pandemic, the UK government, for example, used content creators to spread the word of why we must wash our hands thoroughly. And they realized traditional advertising on television just wasn't working, so they used influencers to share that message. We want to feel motivated and challenged. Lots of examples, even during the pandemic, of fitness influencers really making a name for themselves and continue to do so. Shared passions. We like to follow people like ourselves. So therefore, when you're a content creator, it's really important that you own your niche and you are consistent in what you say and that you don't deviate from that. I thought you'd like to see some stats here about the size of the market. It's important when you're talking to brands to remind them about how much it's grown over the few years. In fact, even in the early 20s, 2004, I think it was, you were looking at an industry worth about 1.4 billion and it has risen in just those years, 2022 to 12 billion, which I still think is probably understated, and is expected to rise to 32 billion by 2029. There's also been some interesting stats about the return on investment, and it has shown that it is 11 times greater ROI than almost any other media. I will caveat that by saying when done well, and i.e. using the right influencers with the right campaign together. 71% of consumers are more likely to buy from a social media influencer. That's really powerful statistical information that you can use when you're talking to brands. And 89% of marketers believe influencers provide comparable or better ROI than traditional media. So let's just look at the first subject, really, was how to build your personal brand on social media and grow your influence. Now, I think what's really important is that I'm not just going to talk about online here, although that is a big part of it, because it's important when you're looking at building your brand is that you become known for something. So I always have this great an acronym as what can we how can we describe ourselves? Whoops, sorry. How can we describe ourselves in 3 or 4 words? And it's really interesting, isn't it? If you look at some of the great Instagram handles, like the yacht guy, you know, these are sorts of words that people remember. He's the guy that's always talking about. Supercar Blondie is another example of one which you may be familiar. Kylie Jenner and Gary V, of course, have been hugely successful in really owning and developing their brand. It's important that you continue to create content that educates, inspires, and entertains. That's the pillar of what you should be doing all of the time. I always believe in having a circle of influential people around you. You know, when I set up the UK Association for Influencer Marketing in 2019, I didn't know anybody in the industry. But what I did do is find some of the industry godfathers, who are the people that were very active in the circle, and invited them to be part of my community. You're also playing to their, you know, the fact that they want to be recognized within their sector as well. So maybe playing to their ego a little bit. That's what I was trying to say. Another good idea is to have your own merchandise, whether it's your own store or just have a few things that you can share with people. Big content creators have got their own stores, their own collections now. I just have some branded mugs with a really powerful message on them. The reason I say that is because it's a really, really good way for people to remember you by. I always used to say, you know, a mug is not just something you drink from, but it's 1,500 times in the course of a year that somebody's seeing your message. Why? Because that's how much the average person drinks tea and coffee. You know, promote your social handles everywhere. So, you know, on your business cards, on your websites, on your email footers. So, but it's not just who you are, but also what you stand for. Good idea to create a Wikipedia page, or if you're not that big enough yet, why don't you try Wikitea? So that's like a baby version of that, but that still can create a huge amount of noise for you. So have a look at that. Ideally, have your own branded website. I have my own, GordonGlenister.com, if you want to have a look at that. But of course, there are many examples of different types of website. And it, you know, it could be something fairly simple, but people want to understand who you are, what you stand for, what you're about. This is a great way to sell other services and products that you have. Write content for magazines as well. There are lots and these could be online magazines or paper-based ones. Pitch an idea to some of them. You know, if you're already a growing influencer, many of them will be very happy to receive content from you. But remember about the angle. What is it that the magazine is trying to do? So anything involving stats or research or a particular view and opinion about a topical subject is a really good idea to explore. Write a book. I've written a book on influencer marketing strategy. You could write something in your particular niche, or indeed just an ebook. And it one of the reasons that my book was successful is because I researched and I involved a lot of opinions from other people. So I conducted interviews with those people and included their comments and attributes within my book. So when the book came to be launched, I was able to share that with those people. In a way, I was almost using the principles of influencer marketing myself. But how if you're a fitness influencer or you are a foodie, perhaps you could interview some chefs, for example, or some restaurants within that as well, or some of the companies that you've worked on a campaign with. You could be a podcaster or guest with others. That's something that I always suggest people do. It's all about getting your brand message and personality out to as many places as possible. And remember, not everybody is going to be just looking at your Instagram account. That said, of course, I would suggest that you focus your attention on Reels. They're the fastest way to grow your Instagram and TikTok and Facebook accounts. And very successfully, you can do that too. I know this sounds a bit corny, but really be nice to people, comment on their posts, have photos taken with people, and do whatever you can to go the extra mile. Reminded about some of the very big famous individuals. I'm just trying to think of her name now. Big music star who I've just suddenly forgotten her name, but she actually spent hours and hours and hours in the early part of her career having photographs taken with people. Like 4 hours on a walkabout. And it really, really made a big difference because what she was getting was user-generated content. They were sharing that through their fan base. So she was getting a lot of Taylor Swift. That was the lady. I knew it'd come to me. Great. So look, there's just a few ideas. There's loads more there that you can have a think about, but hopefully that's piqued your interest. Now, one thing that you must do for sure is to create your own personal media kit for clients. And what this does is it's effectively like a CV, curriculum vitae, or a resume, whatever you might call it, about why somebody should want to work with you. So it's a bio, it's got all of your contact links. This particular lady was actually managed through an agency, so they did quite a lot of this work for her. But nevertheless, you can do this on Canva and many other of the tools that are available. So if I'm a brand and I'm looking to open a restaurant in Bucharest, for example, I would want to make sure that that the people, that the influencers that I'm wanting to invite has got a high percentage of their audience also living around Bucharest. Because if not, and I want to invite people along and talk about it, then actually there's a lot of wasted media spend there. Equally, if I've got a female perfume brand and I want to target a beauty influencer, I would want to make sure that the person's influence is a high percentage of women and not men. Because when it comes to that particular product, I want to make sure that I'm targeting. I mean, actually, maybe a bit different there because men do buy perfume for women, but I think you get the gist of where I'm coming from there. And what we've seen here is a real evolution of the influencer. If you look at, for example, Kylie Jenner in the early part of her career, she was promoting a product, i.e. Fit Tea. And then we have somebody like Dan and Phil, for example, famous YouTubers working with EE, which is a telecoms company. It almost became the product. And then you have somebody like Binky from Made in Chelsea, TV star, endorsing the brand. And then ultimately you have somebody like Zoella, who's got her own makeup brand. So she becomes the brand. So let's now look at some of the best practice guidelines on influencer marketing. Now, I mentioned that I was the global head of influencer marketing at the Branded Content Marketing Association. You can download a copy of their guidelines, which is about 30 odd pages, very, very detailed. It's all free for you to access. But if anybody wants a copy of that, then I'm sure we can make that available through the program as well. So one of the things I learned very early on when I was involved in the BCMA is really understanding what influencers want. And first of all, they want brand guidelines and details about the company, what we call a proper brief. I'm going to go on to talk a lot about that later. Because, you know, when you're creating content for a brand, you want to make sure that you really do understand all the aspects of it in the same way that a company wouldn't go and hire salespeople and expect them to go out and sell on the first day. They would give them training. They would give them a guidebook or a training manual. So it's really important that the influencer has a set of guidelines. Ideally, one point of contact in a company. What they don't want is to deal with somebody that looks after for marketing, somebody that looks after them for finance, somebody that looks after them for customer services. You know, you guys are busy people. You want one point of contact, ideally. Also, very importantly, you want flexibility on brand messaging. You know, a brand is coming to you because you already have an audience. And what's important is that if there is zero flexibility, you might be thinking, I need to push back on this because, you know, my followers are following me because of my tone of voice. And it's really important that the brands do give you flexibility on being able to say what the brand is all doing, but in a way that is reflective in the way that you would say it. Otherwise, it just isn't going to land in terms of content. Also, be absolutely clear is that an influencer doesn't keep doing everything for free. I see influencers as the new creative agencies, actually. And as such, you know, you wouldn't go and expect to have an advert in a magazine and ask for it for free, an advert on television and ask for it for free. So why would you not ask for a professional individual that really understands their niche and their market to pay them the appropriate price? And also, most importantly, is content creators, you are not employees of a brand. You know, you should be treated with respect. You are not somebody that are just amplifying media machines. You know, you have challenges and emotions just like everybody else. And it's important that the reason I say these things is because the best relationships that work, the best collaborations that work, are those where both sides understand and support each other. So let's have a look at setting objectives now. It's really important. The very best influencer campaigns are ones where they have proper goals and objectives. So the first thing to think about is making sure that the goals are SMART. I'll come on to talk about what SMART means on the next slide. You know, are you trying to create brand awareness as opposed to, in other words, you know, wide reach? It might be for a new product or a brand launch. That's ideal for brand awareness. Whereas a more established brand, you might be looking for, you know, click-throughs to a website or something. Or indeed, you might be looking at building a subscriber or audience base. It could be that you are just interested in driving sales. And what that means is that the type of content, the type of creator that you're working with might be very different. You might want to be looking at increasing loyalty or repeat business or generating leads. And that doesn't necessarily mean just selling product. That means driving people down the funnel and all the aspects of that might be involved. For example, it might be a research paper that you worked on together and you are measuring the amount of people that have downloaded that, for example. Social engagement, of course, which is a good indication of engagement on through comments, followers, likes, shares, and that might be a big part of what the brand is also looking to do. And ultimately, therefore, grow their social footprint and brand identity. So I was mentioning what SMART are. You may have heard of these before, but being specific about what you want to achieve, who, what, where, when, and why. Measurable, in other words, setting true key performance indicators, KPIs as we call them, so that you're being very specific about how many followers do you want? What is the engagement that you are looking for? Making sure also, of course, that it is achievable. You want to make sure that you're not setting unrealistic goals as a brand for an influencer, and you taking on this as a creator, making sure that you are not signing up to something that is not achievable. Relevant campaign goals need to align with the overall objectives. And what support do you need to enable that to happen? And of course, a clear identifying timeline as well. So let's have a look more at creating the proper influencer brief. What should there be on it? Well, obviously, you're going to need to know who the client name is and the company. You want to make sure that you've got all of the key contact details. You want to know what the promoted brand is and the brand guidelines that I've already mentioned associated with that. You want to know how long the campaign is going to last. For example, is it going to last for 2 or 3 weeks? Is it going to be lasting for a month, 2 or 3 months? Or is it going to be part of an ambassador program? Whatever that is really important. But also, what is the approvals process? And that should be included within the campaign timeline. You always also want to have a look at a mood board. Now, sometimes brands ask for this in advance. So they're looking for some ideas from you about what you think is going to work. You've got things like Canva, you've got Pinterest that can perhaps create some ideas together before you go and create that content. Because what you don't want to do is go and create a lot of content on the back and then the brand not being happy and saying, no, do that again. It's as important, by the way, that the brand does give you an indication of who their target consumer is as well, and the typical relationship that they have with that. What are the main campaign goals and the deliverables, posts and stories, for example? The ideal types of content preferred. Are we looking for video? Are we looking for feed posts? What are we looking for? And what the reshoot policy is. So in other words, are you expected to go back and do another reshoot? And if so, how many more is that? How many alterations are you going to do within that? Because if you don't sort that out, and that's not tied down clearly, then you could find yourself spending lots of time when all of that could have been avoided at the beginning. Gifting, shipping, and returns where appropriate. And that's really important, that if you are being gifted something, what address do you want that to be sent to? Not all influencers always want it to their homes. They want it somewhere else, whatever that is. And what the returns policy is. In other words, are you going to be able to keep the item, or are you going to have it sent back? And obviously, most importantly, the root usage rights. And now this is something that's really very important and sometimes undervalued. How long are the brand going to be able to use your content, and in what areas? What you don't want to be doing is doing a piece of content, you're thinking you're doing it, they're using it on a website, on a bus shelter, on adverts in magazines, and that, because that wasn't part of the brief and tied down, then you could be losing out on a significant amount of money because that hasn't been part of the agreement. So more things to think about here is product pronunciation and presenting style. So, for example, if you've got, a very good example might be the brand Nike. Now, some people call it Nike, others call it Nike, Adidas, Adidas. That could be just different ways of which the brand is being presented, but it's important that you understand that. Are there going to be a campaign hashtag or other hashtags that the brand would like you to use? Is there going to be a campaign theme on what that might look like? For example, it could be a competition. What are the legal requirements on posting? I'm going to talk about that later, but hashtag ads should always be seen in front of any campaign, whether or not you are paid or gifted. And of course, campaign payment where agreed. So, for example, are you going to be paying is the brand going to be paying you, the influencer, upfront? Or is it going to be a 50-50 split up front and then after the campaign is finished? Or is it going to be within 7 days of the campaign finished? Whatever it is, that needs to be agreed up front. What also is important is the no-nos. What is unacceptable content? For example, it could be blasphemous words. It could be swearing. It could be highly competitive language that won't be helpful. And also how we're going to measure the success of this. And that needs to be very much clearly identified as well. Who are the competitors is also helpful for you when you're creating content, so you can see how the brand is trying to position itself against its rivals. Now, I mentioned the legal requirements. Again, a reminder to download the guide, the BCMA Influencer Marketing Best Practice Guidelines. It shares it in there. There are a number of advertising guidelines around the world. The FTA, Federal Trade Commission, and the Advertising Standards Authority in the UK. And I know that there are others in Europe. The simple and most effective way is to just use hashtag ads at the beginning of where the hashtags are not buried in other links. We need to make sure that we are making it very, very clear to the consumers and the people that are following us that this is a paid or gifted collaboration. There are also different rules that apply for gambling, alcohol, medicines, vaping, and high-fat food as well. Because what we can't be seen to be doing is influencing people, particularly in those very sensitive subjects, without the proper guidelines and authority. So another thing that's very important is to have an influencer contract. So there's one thing having the brief, and then the other, of course, is to have a proper influencer contract. For all of your collaborations, you should be receiving one of these. What's important here is just going through some of the items that I shared, for example, in the brief, making sure that there's proper payment terms, the specifics, what the influencer's responsibilities are, what the disclosures are, the signing off process, the information related to tax status, particularly when it comes to gifting, any confidential clauses, like, for example, non-disclosure agreements. Now, this is important, for example, when you're looking at a new brand launch. They might want to involve influencers, but before the launch date, they obviously need to engage those influencers in advance of that, and you might be required to sign one of these. That's absolutely fine. You just need to make sure that that is clearly identified in any contract. Also, more importantly, is the impacts and actions for breaches. So, for example, if you are involved in a contract and you've agreed it and everything is in place, but you haven't posted at the agreed time, there may well be consequences for you by not doing that, because that may be part of a big brand launch, and it won't be satisfactory to say, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about it, or I had problems with my technical issues. Those are sorts of things that you should be alerting the brand to straight away if you have them. So now we want to have a look at what brands look for in content creators and influencers. First of all, of course, it's not about an influencer is not just somebody that is an individual on Instagram. There are all different types of influencers, and this chart in front of you is just a very good example of where those people would lie. So whether they be, traditional journalists, whether they be industry experts, thought leaders, bloggers, whether they be academics from the educational establishment, whether they be entrepreneurs or senior management, C-suite individuals, whether they be just highly influential decision makers, or whether they be professionals, i.e., parents, students, teachers, lawyers, those types of people. Or, of course, there could be people that run Facebook groups, LinkedIn communities. These are individuals that have got key themes and strong niches. Could also be brand ambassadors, brand advocates, or they could be lobbyists, government officials, and ultimately, of course, celebrity influencers as well. So you can see there's quite a mix of different types of individuals. So this is what a brand really wants. These are some of the things. So when you're thinking of creating content, ultimately, this is what they want. They're buying into you because you have a trusted network. People love what you do. And that is what a brand wants to align themselves with you. They want to tap into your expertise in whatever niche that is. They obviously want to engage with you because you have influence over your followers. So follower size is important, although it's also fair to say that engagement is as important. You could be somebody that is a fly fishing expert, and you have maybe just a few thousand followers, 2 or 3,000. You could still be highly influential because it's a very tight niche, and also because the people that are following you are interested in what type of rods you're using, in what goes on behind the scenes. So you're educating, you're inspiring, and you're entertaining people. And because it's a very tight niche, the chances are you'll have a higher level of engagement than if you were, the Kylie Jenners of this world that have got multi-million followers. They also want share of voice. They want their brand to be seen by as many consumers as possible. And that's why influencer reach gives them a reason, an opportunity to do that. They also want storytelling, and we as consumers are reacting less to intrusive advertising. We like these personal stories, and influencers are in a great place to be able to do that. If you look at blogs, if you look at YouTube, we've got evergreen content here. Unlike a brand spending money on an advert or going to an exhibition, they've spent their money and that's it. It's all over. Whereas actually, if you think about what they've done with collaborating with an influencer, let's just say on a blog, that isn't over just after the campaign. That is on that website forever and a day. It's actually really cost effective to use creators, and much, much more so than many other forms of advertising. And given the tight and the closeness of the audience's niche, you can literally spend only a few $100s and get a response. They provide the brand you've got access to these relevant niches, which is very important for them. You also in a position to give them brand feedback. We had an instance with a creator I interviewed on my podcast a little while ago, and she was a Black creator in Scotland, actually, and fashion influencer, fabulous lady, really great. And she engaged with a very traditional British brand, something that you wouldn't necessarily have associated with perhaps some of the ethnic community. And yet her content was so inspiring, so so creative, that her audience were reacting in such a positive way that they said, I wouldn't have associated myself with this brand, but your content has really helped me think about why it's important to look at it. And so I've now bought into this brand because of your content. Now that is liquid gold from a brand, isn't it? They also can help shift brand perception. Sometimes you've got different ways in which you can tell a story that perhaps a brand hasn't even thought about. And that can be really, really successful. A lot of brands use influencers to amplify their events as well. And that's another important way to engage an audience. Media placements is another example as well, because it's not just, they might want to not just use you for posts and stories, but they also might want to involve you in a mainstream media campaign. There's many examples of this now where big creators are now being used in magazine advertising and billboards, all sorts of things. So it's got huge opportunity. And of course, they want content for their social channels as well. So how can brands find you? Well, there's a number of ways in which they can find you. Obviously, direct and reaching out to you on social media, which is important, which is the reason why it's important for you to put easy contact links for them, email, or you might want to use the linked tree where you can use a lot more contact points as well. They will work through PR agencies, because a lot of PR agencies have a contact base of creators. You might want to start to reach out to some PR agencies so you become on their roster. Talent agencies, if you've reached a certain size of audience and you feel that you could benefit by working with a talent agent, they will take a percentage of the fee that is generated, but also they were going to go out and find brand deals and partnerships for you, because they see the potential in you and they want to grow you as well. Many examples of talent agencies that have been very successful with working with creators. Also influencer discovery platforms. This is another way where brands can have access to these, and this is like a huge database of creators. So reaching out to these, there are hundreds of these around, and it's a great way for you to be part of one. Of course, you're also connected to this one here as well, which is a great way to promote yourself within Eastern Europe. You can also work with influence full service agencies as well. They'll find influencers through social insight platforms, just a general Google search, by using the discovery tools on Instagram and TikTok, and using hashtag tools. So that's another important way for you to be found, making sure that you're using some of the top performing hashtags that are relevant to your niche. Obviously, word of mouth recommendations as well. One thing that you might like to do as well, if you are working closely with a number of other creators, you could create your own pod of others together. So I know, for example, a friend of mine who's a creator, a mummy blogger. She knows a number of other mummy bloggers. And so sometimes if I connect with Louise can actually help bring together half a dozen other mummy bloggers for a campaign. The benefit is she knows them, she knows their content's good, and she trusts them. So that's an easier job for me because I happen to know her. There are influencer apps as well, which is another way that you can be found. Now, this is very important. More and more, there's a lot more data now on influencers. What we want to try and do is stop the bad practices and make sure that the good guys get a real good share of voice. So here are some of the things that they're going to be looking at when they do their vetting. They're going to check the date and the time that they vetted the influencer. Has the influencer got a willingness to do exclusive partnerships? That may be a decision for you, yes or no. And if so, what does exclusive look like? Because you don't want to limit yourself, but you might find that by working with a brand for a short-term exclusive partnership might give you huge amounts of revenue. Are they likely to be agreed to do a number of posts at agreed times? What is their age validation where relevant, particularly when it comes to alcohol, for example, or vaping? Is the influencer a registered business or an individual? Is the influencer managed by a talent agent? What type of previous brand partnerships and when? And this is important. So, for example, if you were a gin brand, an alcoholic gin brand, what you don't want to have a look at is the previous feed that shows them promoting all manner of the brand's competitors. So they do want to have a look at that, but they also know, they're not stupid to know that if you're a very niche specialist, you are going to be working with different people. But I'm just saying that they're going to be looking and exploring that as part of their vetting process. They want to make sure that you've got no foul or racist language on there. They'll have a look at your most recent posts, normally about 6 or 10 of them. They'll look at the engagement, the sentiment, the location, and the competitors. They'll have a look at the metrics and methodology as well. And of course, most importantly, they'll want to have a look at your brand safety check. What they don't want is they want to know how many of your followers are true followers and not bought, fake, or bot followers. And there are obviously tools out there to try and limit this as possible. And also, they want to make sure that you as a creator are not just every post is an advertising post. They want to make sure that there is a high percentage of organic posts, of which they know is very important to harness the community. This is an example of some of the platforms that exist to enable that to happen. So you can see straight away there what type of breakdown you can see before they have selected an influencer. Here's just a few little things to think about when spotting fake followers. Apparently 8% of Instagram followers are indeed fake. You want to have a look all the time at improving your engagement rate. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but you know, who are the followers with no profile photo? Ditch them. Spammy usernames, ditch them. Naught followers on their Instagram, get rid of. If the comments are totally irrelevant to the subject, you might want to have a look at that. If they've got low follower engagement and few comments and likes on each post, these are red flags to be aware of. Even if it means reducing your follower base, it will improve your level of engagement, which is the most important thing to have on your social platform. And also another little thing to mention is if they've got poor images or video quality, these are also signs as well. So here are some of the ways in which I suggest brands engage with influencers, and it's through these 4 steps, and I'm going to share with you what I think is important. So there's the light touch, really, and that's about reaching out, tagging influencers in social media, sharing their content, and looking at some sponsored content. Then there's the recognizing the influencers, and that's working to a specific list. That's sharing influencer quotes, it's doing in-depth interviews with influencers, and it's working with them on more strategic stuff like blog posts, ebooks, and infographics. Now we're really starting to look at activating influencers a lot more. So we're embracing you as subject matter experts for us. We're looking at might be where we've got employees co-creating social posts. It might be doing more interviews, more in-depth panel discussions, having you on speaker sessions at events and things like that. And of course, longer form content that might be paid or otherwise. And then really what we're looking for ultimately is to develop advocates for our brand. So this isn't just one-off campaigns. This is about having a seamless partnerships. So this is about, for example, a podcast series. This is about working over a 12-month program, maybe. It might be, commenting on brand research that the brand has done. So you can see straight away here, this is the type of engagement strategy that these brands are looking for. As an example of a rollout campaign model here, so you can just see, I was talking to you about having a timeline here, and this is all about, how the weeks are really going out from week 3 to 10 to 7 to 10, all the way through. It's just an idea of how that is going to play out. Examples of some of the deliverables of which you're all very familiar with, I'm sure. But, for example, on Instagram, it might be a static post, might be stories, might be in-feed video, blog post, Facebook content to differ from Instagram content. And then, just some revisions and stuff like that. And again, I did talk about this earlier, usage rights and paid amplification. How does a brand want to use the influencer content beyond just posting it into the creator content? And that's really being very specific about what that might be. You can see some examples there. But there might also be a license fee for a specific time for using the brand outside of those core postings. You should definitely explore that. And when you're putting your pitches together to work with a brand, you might like to say, look, this is what it's going to cost to work with me for Romania. But if you'd like to extend this further outside into other countries, or you'd like me to do this and this, then this is what the cost is going to be. So you give them some options to think about spending more money with you. Stuff like boosting, whitelisting, and dark posting will also cost extra. Now, a lot of the most successful campaigns actually have been where there's been added social spend behind them. This is another example of a detail about the different types of influencers, where they're going to be recruited from, the different content use cases, what the offer is likely to be, what the message is going to be and call to action, how we're going to measure the campaign, what the ROI, return on investment, is going to be, and ultimately what the business objective is. So just having a clearly defined plan like that makes it a lot different. And really just looking at some of the ways in which we measure the campaign here in a little bit more detail, right from the goals to the reach, to the social engagement, subscriber growth, landing page visitors. When we were talking earlier about making sure that there's proper goals in place, this is where you start to be very specific about that, what might that look like. And also being even more specific to that, this is quite a useful chart here that shows you how that specific might look like. So we might say, right, we're looking for an engagement of over 5% for those influencers that have got 1 to 5,000, with an average number of likes between this range. And as you go down the chart, you can see how that has developed and progressed. So just a few more slides now on how you can make money as a content creator. So first of all, what you can do for brands. First of all, you can have a look at creating research opportunities with them. And those might be white papers, those might be little mini guides. You could be interviewing some of their target clients. You could be really collaborating a piece of research documentation, which they can then use as a downloadable tool to drive great awareness. I've done a few of these before and they've been very successful. You could be write an article on their own website, or indeed, you could go and be somebody within their social media team for the period of a campaign. We call that a social media takeover. You could publish a book that includes the creator content. That's the brand saying that. If they wanted to create a cookbook, for example, they've got much of the content, but what you could do is be the introducer towards it, and that be also part of the collaboration together. Or just on that, you could write the book and then go to a brand and they might sponsor it and might buy 1,000 copies of that and might give it out to their clients. So there's another way of looking at that. You can invite people to the events. You could be the speaker and a panel guest. What they also might want to do is give you some exclusive access to behind the scenes content. That can also be really successful. You can also provide them, obviously, with Instagram stories, Twitter conversation. You could be Clubhouse host. I don't know if that's still going. But, there's lots of ways in which you can drive awareness for them. Definitely on YouTube and TikTok. You could do some live stream content for them. You could do some podcast collaborations, new product launches, demos, gifting, competitions, and many, many more, I'm sure. You can also drive actual sales and downloads. Lots of creators have been used in driving downloads very successfully, actually. You could also create your own brand, but what has also happened in the past is brands have reached out to famous influencers and asked them to create their own brand within their own product range. So, for example, Ariana Chanas sold $4 million in sales in one day with her collection with Nordstrom. And Daniel Bernstein launched her swimwear range with Onia, and she generated almost $1.8 million in just 12 hours. So you can see what's possible with working with brands and selling products. And that's definitely where the future is going. Rates, of course, vary for posts. You may well be finding that you're getting more than this, but this is a bit of a guide to help you. And indeed, how we break down the nano through to mega influencers in terms of follower numbers. Similar on TikTok as well. What I would say is the tighter your niche, the more that you will be able to charge. Other ways in which you can make money, getting your podcast sponsored. For example, my influence podcast there, we've had about £2,500 for a series of 5 episodes. You might like to also, if you do have a podcast, think about having a media deck just for that. And also it's remembering what the brand is trying to do. They want more exposure. They want more downloads to their brand website or white paper or everything, so it's always thinking about what they want and how you can slot into that. Creators can also create their own membership program, many examples of that. Or you can create a course on Udemy or many other platforms as well. You could be a paid speaker or personal experiences, whatever that may look like. And of course, be a live stream influencer as well. And that's through affiliate marketing, where you earn a percentage of the sale. You might also be able to give a percentage of that back to your follower base as well. You can also become an ambassador. And this is just an example of what it's like to be a Glossy ambassador. And you can see straight away there's a number of different things that they offer their ambassadors. But by you reaching out to a chosen company, a long-term ambassador tends to work a lot better than some of just the short-term campaigns. And obviously, there are different monetization methods on the platforms as well that you can find out more about. But hopefully that's given you a taster for really driving your influencer strategy forward and making more money. Thanks very much for listening.